Hello, I'm Chrissy.
And I'm Caroline, and we're interior designers. More and more people are asking us about what we do and how we do it.
Which brings us to our new design adventure, the Design Duet. Join us as we discuss the ins and outs and the ups and downs of interior design. Hello.
Hello and welcome, Chrissy.
Hello and welcome, Caroline. How are you?
Really good. How about you?
I'm good. Today's topic is budgets. It's a big one.
It's a big one. It's one that a lot of people don't like talking about.
No.
It is a big thing, and it is something that has to be talked about because it determines what we do and how we do and what we do in our work.
That's right. And how do you determine a client's budget? How do we work within our budgets to maintain client expectations? How do we do it?
Well, it's a hard conversation, isn't it?
And can be very confusing.
Correct. So I think we talk about budgets anyway in our initial consultation. So it is always present. So even though you may not know it definitely is always present.
I would agree.
Because as soon as you arrive to a client's property, or as soon as your client shows us the scope of work, or shows us the drawings that come from the architect or come from the builder, we are all always thinking about budget.
But even in like your initial, say, phone call, when your client's speaking about what's needed on that project, you're automatically thinking budget, aren't you?
Without a doubt. And
everyone has a budget.
Everyone does have a budget. And in having that conversation with that client, that initial consultation, that initial conversation, it absolutely is determined also by where that project is going to be.
And there's just so many moving parts in design when it comes to budget because every job's so different too.
Correct.
So every job's going to have a different budget.
I agree with you. So it is determined often by what the end result is and what it's going to look like and what's going to be put into that particular project. And so I'm talking residential, but I'm also talking commercial as well.
Yeah.
Because I feel that commercial jobs often can be huge and bigger than what people actually expect if it's done correctly and done to the nth degree.
And everything's done in multiples.
Correct.
On the commercial job.
Exactly. Often, yeah, I agree. And then, but in residential, as I said before, where is the project? So that often can determine the budget.
Yeah.
It's overcapitalising. It's making sure that you haven't gone too far or you've gone too low, especially for people who are wanting to on-sell.
Yes. Or whether it's a forever home.
Correct. Exactly. So it
will determine the budget.
Absolutely. So budget is talked about from the beginning.
Well, it should be.
Absolutely. And we try and break it down because often people will say to us, well, what should my budget be? Or what do you think my budget is? Or how much will you guys cost? Because you're going to be included in my budget. So those three key things need to be brought to attention from the beginning.
I mean, you might as well say how long is a piece of string?
That's true, Chrissy. That is so true.
So it's just easier to break this down and ask questions, and sometimes these questions are answered, as you said before, during the initial consultation and during the onboarding process. But basically the budget needs to be the amount of money you've set aside or you may have available to you. And it's really helpful when a client knows their design style and the items they need to complete the job. That really helps us with our budget.
I agree with you. So from that, you try and determine, if this particular job's going to be an entry-level job or it's going to be a mid-end or a high range.
Because we don't want there to be any surprises for the client. When you say entry-level, what do you mean, Caroline?
Okay, well, I'll give you an example. So I was at a fabric house the other week and somebody asked a question and said to the representative at that fabric house, where does your price point start? So and where does it end? And what is your entry level? And the representative went back to that particular client and said, well, we start at $40 per metre, but we go up to $1,000 per metre. And the client looked at the representative in a funny way and said, oh, I don't really understand what you're saying. She said, well, your entry level might be different than my entry level. So it's like someone, wanting to buy a beautiful fabric, but they can only afford what is called an entry level. But your entry level might be $40 per metre, but the next person's might be $400 per metre.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by entry level.
And would you say
mid-range.
people often say to me, do you always work with high-end clients? What would you say to that?
No, we don't. Absolutely not.
We work with every budget, don't we?
Exactly. So, because people prioritise our work and what we do differently. So we might get somebody who's bought, their first one-bedroom flat and they're doing this for the first time and they don't want to make a mistake and
they're nervous
and they've put aside X amount of dollars, and so they come to us and they say, okay, this is my budget, but how much will it cost you? How much will it cost me to have you guys do this for me?
Yeah.
So therefore, in their budget, they will need to take us and that money's out of that budget so that they know exactly how long it's going to take.
And every budget is a challenge for us, be it big, be it small. No
Correct.
budget is simple.
Exactly. And why do you think that is, Chrissy?
Oh, just because every job has so many complexities to it, whether it's just a simple furnishing of a room as opposed to a whole house. It's always complex.
Exactly.
Because we all have different personalities, and that's sort of brought out in your home, isn't it?
Exactly. And, as we say to each other, often walking away from the initial consultation, and someone may show us a magazine and they've said, this is what I want. I want this sofa and I want that dining table. I want those chairs. And we know that particular item or those items are from overseas.
Yeah.
And that sofa's, $60,000. And they've given us a budget of $60,000 for the lounge, dining and the master bedroom.
Yeah, so often clients have unrealistic expectations of prices.
Correct.
Because they just don't know. And it's often not, the prices are often not in the magazines, are they?
Correct. Exactly.
And TV shows. I love it when they say, the client has given us a budget of $100,000 when you know that they've literally spent millions. Literally.
Exactly. So all those sort of things come into play. And so we've got to have that conversation with the client. So, and be honest. And, as I always say and you always say to the clients, we're never offended.
No.
So if you don't like something, or if you do like something, or if you really hate something, we hope that doesn't really happen often.
Let us know.
Please let us know. We won't be offended. But, that is that's part of what we do. So, and working out and, coming to a fair and reasonable budget with a client, I think that's
well, I think
what
what
really
we would say at
important.
this point is obviously everyone has a budget, but we'd like to say, what are your priorities?
Yeah.
Which helps people figure out their budgets often.
Absolutely. So with each client, in asking us what they think the budget should be, that is a really, really hard question. Like you said, how long's a piece of string? But from that, you can take away what their priorities are.
And you can itemise it.
Correct. So therefore that probably leads me to when I do that initial consultation, that is actually done, with the client, with clients or, potential people. And from there, I actually do up a client agreement for that particular client. So it's an introduction. It's an introduction to the client of what exactly we do, and it's broken down so that the client can actually see what the process is of how we work.
And where the money is spent.
Correct. And in that, I also list what we've talked about in that initial consultation. So that would be, for example, in your dining room, we have talked about the windows.
The scope of work.
The window finishings that need to go into that particular area, the paint colours, or the wallpaper, or the lighting, and if we're going to be putting decorative lighting or just keeping it
Knocking down walls.
exactly, or doing cabinetry, or what sort of flooring, or if we're going to be adding rugs, dining table, dining chairs, artwork, mirrors. All of that comes into play. So if we've talked about that and the client has brought that to our attention, it is documented. So therefore,
And broken down.
So therefore, we can actually give that back to the client. So in that initial introduction come the client agreement, and from there they can actually see that we've itemised everything. So perhaps then this might help them to actually prioritise what they want for this build and put a dollar value next to it.
Well, it's like sometimes you might show a client a table and perhaps it's, say, $5,000, and they might say, that's fine. So then you go, okay, I know I'm looking at $5,000 tables. I'm not looking at $2,000 tables, $20,000 tables. It's been broken down to that price point.
So it gives us a guide, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So when we're sourcing, there's our guide. And, it may come in that that $5,000 is, yes, it comes out at a $6,000 table, but maybe we find something a little bit less expensive on the dining chairs, and they might have allocated a bit more on the dining chairs than what we've actually spent.
So we can then spend that on something else.
Correct. So making sure that we're looking at the overall budget.
And then breaking it down.
Exactly.
So here we are at the next question. How much do we actually cost, Caroline?
Yes. Well, again, that is something that we talk about with every client. And if they have got a budget on our time, because, of course, everything that we do is documented, and everything from time to actual travel and consultations and site visits, all of this comes into how we charge. So
it's all documented for transparency.
Exactly. So our fee structure is going to be different than another designer.
But, people often think they can't afford a designer, but perhaps they can't afford not to have a designer, so they don't make costly mistakes, and so they have less headaches in the long run. We manage costs. We listen to the client's brief so that we can get the project moving. We're accountable and we communicate it all.
Correct. Absolutely. And so therefore, as a result, that's why we charge, because we are doing all of that. So we charge by the hour.
Yes.
And as I said, not every interior designer, decorator charges like that.
But that's what we do.
That's what we do. And it's the same with builders and architects. Like an architect that I'm working with at the moment, or we're working with at the moment, she charges at a flat fee. So she is doing the drawings for this particular client, and her flat fee will be what the actual build is going to be, and it's a percentage of. So
what happens if she goes over her flat fee?
That's got to be talked about.
Right.
It's got to be talked about with the client. So, and again, that leads to something else that we could talk about is, for example, that person who's purchased their first flat, their one-bedroom flat, and they've said, this is my budget, this is all I can afford to pay. And we'll say to them, okay, so we'll put you in at our hourly rate, and this is going to take, I feel, 10 hours of our time to do your work.
That's usually how it's priced, isn't it? 10 hours.
Well, generally we try and put in allotments of that, especially if it's a one-bedroom flat. Okay, let's try and, these are going to be how many hours we're going to spend on this. And so how are we going to work with that 10 hours to give her the best result and give her choices and selections, and also
and have enough money left over to spend on the actual product.
Correct. And so that's what we've got to work with each client, because, as we say, each client's different. If you're building your dream home, like you talked about before, and the architect's involved, so your budget includes that architect.
Yes.
It includes the builder,
the
build, the trades, us, and the list goes on.
And the landscapers at the end.
Correct.
Look, we don't want budgets to go overboard, do we? And that's why, we try to manage unrealistic expectations, and we do this by regular quoting.
Exactly. So quoting and invoicing regularly is key. and making sure that the client is up to date and knows what we're doing. And I feel like that conversation, making sure that they're involved in the project, they can see from what you produce to them every week, what you've actually been doing in the last week. They will know how many hours.
And, I mean, there's always going to be little problems in the build. I mean, there's always things that you don't know are going to happen, once you start ripping up things.
Absolutely.
So we do always explain that too, have a little bit of contingency money.
Yeah, a buffer.
A buffer, yeah.
Correct. Because, we don't know, all of that is going to come into play.
Yeah.
And it can sometimes put a job on hold.
Yes.
And that's boring too.
Boring.
Well, boring because
probably pretty stressful.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah, boring for us because we just want to get the exciting part of it all up and running.
Very true. Anyway, I think we've sort of explained that there's transparency the whole way through with our budgets.
Yes, and I feel like in every client agreement that I actually give to the client, that I make sure that all the terms and the conditions are clearly listed. And as I said, in the scope of work, I go through room by room, space by space, area by area to make sure that it is actually listed. And so therefore there's no hidden things.
No.
And, we don't want any stones unturned either.
No. We don't want people thinking it's our fault.
Correct.
There's a problem.
Absolutely. So just being honest and transparent, I think it's so important.
And communicating.
Yeah, I think
at
communication.
All times, be it phone, email.
Exactly.
Text. How do we charge?
So as I said to you before, I do charge at an hourly rate. So not everybody would like to work like that. There's interior designers out there who work out as an hourly rate or as a flat fee, and that's fine. It's often what you feel comfortable with. And also because we do receive a lot of discounts, trade and wholesale dollar values on items, product that we do purchase for clients, we do hand on that to clients.
So they never pay recommended retail.
Absolutely. And as we've said in previous podcasts, custom making of our goods is a big part of what we do. So, often there is products that aren't really recommended retail anyway. True. But people do refer back to recommended retail prices, in a lot of the work that we do. Yeah, but I do say, yes, I charge an hourly rate because I feel like it's transparent. And as I said, when we do meet up with clients, often weekly, fortnightly, monthly, they can see what work has been put into what we've given them.
And also, when we say hourly rate, we might have clients, it's very variable, because we might have clients that they're DIYers and they just want an hour of our time and they're prepared to pay for the hour just to get our thoughts and ideas on what they're doing and how they can go about doing it or how to improve what they're doing. Or we might just have a client who just wants a colour consult for an hour or two.
Exactly.
So it varies. And then we might have a client do a 10-hour package, shall we say.
Exactly. So like we talked about with, that young person who's bought her first apartment.
Yeah.
And so I've only got 10 hours that I can use with you because you charge out at this particular amount. So, but then, for a whole home, I'm going to say to you that all clients would definitely know that it's going to be hours and hours and hours of work.
That's right.
And a lot of the time,
which you break down into the scope of work so they can see.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time, during that time, people will say, oh, look, I found this light. I'm going to purchase that.
Yeah.
And,
that's fine.
That's fine. Absolutely. Go for your life.
If you love it.
If you love it.
We want you to have it.
Exactly. So that's, often happens along the way. So as a result of that, that's one item in the scope of work that's been deleted. So you tend to start gauging where the client's at. If they're at the end of a build and it's a
often
multi-million-dollar build,
they start slowing down with
purchasing
what
with
they want
us
to purchase.
And our time.
Because there might have been a problem in the build and they've had to spend so many more thousands there.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So we are gauging that through
That's
the
right.
process of a build.
And we can't forget a big part of our billing is production and product management.
Correct. And those costs are things that we don't often see, but it's a big part of what we do. And so documenting is crucial at this point because we want to make sure that if there was ever needed to be some transparency,
Yeah,
it's all documented.
that's right. We can pull out
And-
anything if we need
Exactly.
to make sure it's correct. So once items are ordered and deposits have been paid, we manage the production and the ETAs.
Correct.
And
And
we
a lot of
update
that
the client regularly.
Exactly. And a lot of that is, us, in our Monday meetings, saying, okay, where were we at with that job? Where, what's going to be delivered this week? What's actually finished? What isn't finished? Was there a problem there? Is production, not going to happen? Can we look at something different?
So there's a lot of emails flying around.
Yeah, emails, there's communication, communication to our suppliers, to our, trades, to our reps.
Something might be stuck on a dock for an extra 3 weeks.
Correct.
We have to communicate all of that to our clients.
Exactly, communication to the clients.
And it's often out of our control too,
Exactly.
isn't it?
Well, especially since COVID.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
The post-COVID world we live in is longer.
I know, which is, yes,
and harder.
very annoying. But I think people are more, they know that now.
Yep.
I think they're more accepting of that.
Yeah.
Yes, whereas before we had no reason except it's stuck on a dock or on a ship somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
Pre-COVID, lots of frustration if something was stuck on a dock. Post-COVID, clients are a little bit more understanding.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Because they know it's out of our control.
Exactly. And so all of those things come into play with your budget too, because therefore, as a result, you're spending more time on that client.
It can take
job.
hours
Exactly.
just finding out where a chair's gone
Exactly.
or how much longer it's going to be or there's a problem
Exactly.
that you've got to rectify.
Yes. So we make sure that, it's as simple as possible and we keep saying communication is key at this point in time.
Caroline, we must mention budget misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And for designers, there are many billing misconceptions. For example, do we bill for travel, Caroline?
We do. Absolutely. So
Why?
Well, I bill for my time. I bill for my travel because that's important to us. This is my livelihood. This is what I do for a living.
We can be in cars driving around, sourcing or picking up something for a client or
Site
dropping a sample
visits.
off, site visit, meeting a builder, meeting an architect, meeting a client for hours every day.
Exactly. So I do absolutely bill for this and, I try and make smart decisions also. So if I'm, billing to go and see somebody out in the West, I make sure that I can pop in perhaps and see a supplier out in the West.
That's right, or drop back a sample at the same time or pick a sample up.
Exactly. So I'm very mindful of my time as long as we're transparent with that.
That's right.
It's fair and reasonable.
Designers do bill for installation and styling. This is a massive part of our job and we want to get it right for our client.
Absolutely. So, often we are on installations for, again, hours.
Hours.
And it's sometimes just waiting around, for the installer. And often the installer comes and he's actually got to make something up or he's got window furnishings massive. Doing and inserting window furnishings into a property is huge. So as a result of that, we are on site.
We might need to be there to make sure the level of the fabric reaches the floor or we might want it pulled on the floor. We need to be there to make sure that is correctly done.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's definitely important for us. Some things can be delivered, and installed without us being there.
Yeah.
And as long as that's fine with the client, as long as it's fine with the builder, architect, whoever, the trades, whoever is taking responsibility for that, if they're happy for that to happen, fantastic. But, yeah, we do go on to jobs and do styling. And as we've talked about in previous podcasts, styling is a big part of what we do and it's often at the end of the job. And, it brings everything together. And
right.
and people want us to do this. They get so excited, and
Yeah.
they might bring out all their other goodies that they haven't actually shown us.
And also this is where we show our expertise and years of experience
Yeah,
through our styling at the very end of the job. Just arranging things in a certain way. We just, that's what we do.
exactly. And so that's part of our job that we really love
That's
and
right.
enjoy doing as well.
And Caroline, it must be noted that designers do have different fee rates. Why do
Yeah.
you think that is?
Well, I'll say to you, I think it is often what people think they're worth,
Mm-hmm.
and also how many years they might have been in their profession. Yeah, so
They might be an expert in a particular field of design.
absolutely. And, as I talked about before, the architect that I'm working with at the moment, her flat fee being she will take it out of a percentage of the drawings of the build that she is
Right.
creating for that client. And interior designers do that too. They might say per square metre, I will be working off how much that house project
Yeah.
is going to be per square metre.
Yep.
And they might have flat fee to complement that.
Yes.
But they also may even say, this is my flat fee from the beginning, and I know that kitchen design and the installation of the kitchen and the actual time it's going to take, the call it 6 months is
Mhm.
going to be $40,000 of my time. Well, you've got to be able to say that to the client up front.
Yeah.
You can't shy away from that.
No. And I think essentially that's what we're saying about interior design budgets or architect or builder. You can't just put your head in the sand.
Exactly.
You've actually got to discuss it.
Absolutely. And you've got to be upfront and be transparent. But,
And prioritise.
absolutely. And we do, as I said previously, that we do get, kickbacks from companies.
Yes.
So, we're the ones who are using these companies. So as a result, they're saying, thank you for your loyalty. So we do get a kickback.
Yeah.
So we often don't hand that kickback on to the client. We will hand on a discount to them without a doubt.
Yeah.
We're transparent with the client who wants to know that. Absolutely, no problems. But yeah, we do get kickbacks from the companies and the businesses that we use.
And when you're saying we're the ones using the suppliers, that's because most of our suppliers are trade-only suppliers. The general public can't go into these showrooms.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So as a result of that, people do come and ask us, can we use your trade discount? Well, no, because this is what we do. This is our business. This is what we've created. And as a result, no, you don't get that benefit.
No.
Unless you use our interior design business.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's a business. It's not a hobby.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay, Caroline, here's a little question for you.
Oh, okay.
What would you say to a client who had a low budget but still wanted to reupholster a sofa in a very beautiful, expensive fabric?
Okay, well, I'd say to them, if you want to use it and you love it enough and you're passionate and it's something that you're going to enjoy, I would say buy once, buy well. So I would absolutely encourage them to purchase that. And perhaps it is, something that's prioritised in their world, in their life, in their, lifestyle. And perhaps, they have to take their foot off the pedal on something else for a period of time. But yeah, if you can do it, I would absolutely encourage that person to do it.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
And what about you, Chrissy? What about if someone says, wants to have a conversation about using our business, our practice? How do you go about that and having a healthy conversation?
So do you mean like, say I'm out having a coffee and
Yeah.
someone says, oh, I see you're an interior designer. How do I go about using you?
Or can I use you?
Can I use you? Sure, anyone can. I'd say let's have a little chat, sort of discuss what you need, and we'll take it from there, and then we can go through our fees. We can send you an email or have a little chat about fees. But let's start off with a chat and see what you need.
Yeah, great.
Do you think that's probably, I think, what you would say too?
Absolutely. And again, I'm big on if the glove fits and if you've hit it off with that particular person.
Yeah.
great, because then they may meet me and think, I think I'd just like to actually use Chrissy, not me. I hope that never happens. But you never know.
Never know.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Do you ever assume a person's budget?
No.
No. Never judge a book by its cover.
It's so true, isn't it? You just never know what people, have in their background, what they've, wanting and what their priorities are.
Yeah.
So no, never judge a book by its cover, because our job is really to listen.
100%.
And we're listening to what that person, what that client, what the client's needs, and their priorities are. And we've just got to listen and gauge what they're going to actually budget for.
Yeah. Just try and do the best job we can within their budget.
Absolutely. So no, we would never assume a person's budget.
Never.
Because our budget, and someone else's budget is completely different. And you and I laugh about this often. We'll be out looking at something and we'll say, oh, that light fitting, it's fabulous. Like, yeah, I think they're definitely going to use it, $20,000. Yeah, definitely. And we laugh about it because we think there's no way we'd be using that $20,000 pendant in our house.
No, well, we couldn't. Well, I couldn't afford it.
Yeah, so that's the sort of things that we laugh about often because we, talking about that particular client's budget, which is definitely not, something that we would put into our own personal budgets.
No.
Yeah.
And that's why it varies so much.
Correct. And do you think, Chrissy, that we're accessible? Do you think that people think that?
Well, I think, this leads into questions we've spoken about before about, why use a designer. And I think it's just getting that message across that it is worth using a designer and we are easy to find. And yes, I think we are accessible. I think you and I are very friendly people. And, well, I think that's why we've always got work, because we are accessible. And we are approachable.
Yeah.
And we're
affordable
and willing and happy to talk about all facets of it.
Fantastic. I love that.
And I think maybe that's enough on budgets.
Yes.
Who knew we could talk so much on budgets?
Exactly.
And it's been fun and we hope you've enjoyed it. And again, if you want to get in contact with us, DM us on Instagram, shoot us an email. Caroline says you can phone her if you want. Don't phone me. No, you can phone me. But the main thing is hopefully you've got something out of today, and feel free to get in touch and we will see you again.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to get in touch, email us on thedesignduet@gmail.com or DM us on our Instagram page, The Design Duet.